Hello, there are intelligence families from Weathersfield who have been putting fake transcripts, have been collusion slash S with other countries over criminal enterprises and private ones since before everyone was born. These are also families that are involved with countering such as collusion slash S. And when they get caught, they do things like pretending they're trying to defend their roles as unmarked, intelligence dishonestly, as the breaching method knew they would. They have roles with wire and mail crime methods, which are also confessions, not just to me, but to the breaching method that knows I had collusions with them. At and next to the campuses, they're putting fake things in databases. They have the intelligence families interbranch involved with foreign and domestic shared together. They already had roles with predicate acts with facts methods and self-valued roles with all kinds of natures of organized crimes with the ASAT and the breaching methods use slash uses of all sides of criminal and civil cases in the interbranch names and names with the state of Connecticut corrections offices and the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, also involved with organized crime methods grouped, but I mean connected to a singular breaching method with Washington, D.C. names and World Trade Center names. This is also where and how, relative to where and to how, our founders left declassified for us to appreciate why and how overt criminal enterprises and private ones and terrorists had collusion slash S with the differences of their guilt of the other countries or of the witch trials. There's a witch trials place right next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, too, then and now, at states A through Z, even though we don't have a state Z. They have, interstates and internationally, they have the same telling of our history is wrong. And self-valued rules are use slash uses of knowledge and of good and evil about facts with history used to get over on those most principal things. Box things like how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, in nature's answers, replaced by our breaching methods that we can all discern. In other words, uses of our own differences, their own differences, the people involved, where and how we could observe it. There's a breaching method involved as a scientific value. As a scientific value, replacing the system that is distinct where it goes by. In other words, if we could discern if we are using its system or not. In other words, if we have, not they're using the word environment. I'm not want to use that word. I want to use the word in nature. If nature is demonstrating to us we're losing species, the water is getting more polluted every year. We are an identity of relationship to ourselves and to the ground, and to where it's hyper additional with that as itself to itself that is no longer appreciating Earth's and or nor our own a special difference. We are not allowing minds to appreciate special difference the ways nature shows us how to describe how we think, how reason works, how nature works. The experts on psychiatry, a bunch of people at and next to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, have roles with intelligence families near me. They have been since they were kids, used where and how it's recorded. All natures of investigations, investigators are being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. And then they're shown they need to hide that. The breaching method also uses hyper additional collusion slash S, where and how is all sides of criminal and civil cases, the news, names at the crime scenes next to them, body dumping spots, campuses as crime scenes, right through the forced roles with years apart, child abusers, principal leaders of kids, first forced, including religious nutbags involved with it, with the campuses. It's not by accident where and how they have people pretending passions and emotions. And regarding if we have to call them names because they're preventing us short words and they're attaching us to fake words. Connecticut's networks have roles at and next to the campuses I went intercities with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, and more of them recorded for us. Checked, certain, persuaded to self-value roles. also by their rules with interbranch and foreign, even though it's right where they don't self-valid rules. But in other words, so they have people spreading lies to the kids about their family members, putting them in fake conversations with themselves and with others, fake ties to others. A bunch of people with the name Mendez have the Britain Superior Court and next to Harvard, Fox Connecticut News. They have rules with Central Connecticut State University and the Britain Connecticut Intelligence, and with Trinity College Intelligence, with names next to them, and Harvard next to the state capitol, has a bunch of people tied to these names, Cololo, and ones with the name Smith, involved with the Wethersfield Police, fake transcripts with ties to me as a kid, and now as an adult too, with a whole bunch of police tied to the departments involved with the same house, and one's tied to them, involved with Syntax, federal evidences crimes, investigators use remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Their roles with houses and businesses, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, with the difference of guilt uses, roles, collusions at or next to the campuses, including Harvard Hospital, has a bunch of families with the businesses and houses with the intelligence communities, intercities at New Britain Superior Court, and at New Britain's Central Connecticut State University, and the high school has more people involved with some untimely deaths, sexual and medical offenders of kids, other natures of organized crimes, where everyone wants to go about the thing, get involved with subjects as a bunch of fakes, as they are only capable of it too because of the campuses. You guys have replaced what our founders left each age of fact-keeping nature to understand about our founders, plural, and about why and how. The only name of one founder that we know is James Madison. It's the only founder we know the name of. And then they went to George Washington and got him to use their plan to counter-extort the rest of the founders. Obviously, in other words, he didn't have free speech either. And everyone had to pretend they had free speech to an extent, /S. Otherwise, that body was censored and it was adapted to by the breaching method, including if that body was a majority of people, including if it was everyone of an entire country. Note that could only be operated by locations, areas, and states voicing and voicings. That the breaching method, hyper-foreign, kept and keep individually grouped and together and capable of defending their roles with that and us at the same time, or themselves at the same time. It is recorded how they have criminally foreign influence, fact-keeping nature, quality aspects of nature used regarding the validity of what they learned in campuses or in life regarding, in other words, when they debate people dishonestly, when they try to use how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, while they try to use how clearer than day. There is not freedom at the cities, distinctly from, but also non-distinctly from how there is not freedom at suburbs. They are an identity of the grounds, identity of relationship to itself, only capable of having nature demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and then further as roles with it, with a breaching method that nature is demonstrating at the same time. And the breaching method fit those roles, only allowed, only remembered. So it could hide behind and through that. Relative to reasons why it's important for us to understand why and how there are styles, natures of logic that are manifest, dependent upon criminally foreign influence, fact-keeping nature, quality aspects of natures, principle treatments. See, we have black pupils, whites of eyes. Nature shows us about principles. Nature shows us there are completely different species, individual species bodies, and each one of them is made up by a whole bunch of individual bodies, just like ours, because we didn't invent that and they didn't invent that, and nature has been demonstrating this to us. Nature's demonstrations and nature shows, nature's communications have been placed. Our founders left declassified for themselves and for us to understand this. See, James Madison, we're supposed to appreciate why and how he did not have free speech and why how him and everyone else had to pretend to other anyway. internationally, not just because internationally monitored conversations were involved and forced questions to be answered, but that were criminally foreign influence questions to measure and maintain everyone an extent of collusion syntactically, therefore physically, against themselves and against everyone else, and per roles with the breaching method uses of differences, tactical ulterior from how nature uses it, and uses the difference of the value of our long words and our short words. Because the parts of itself come with its individual identity of value progression to the extent it is with us. The parts of itself are manifest with a part that won't juxtapose with temporary / lasting space nature. Where its complete identity, just like this, this is the way we have a complete identity, and a whole bunch of different parts of ourselves that are a semi-nature relationship to complete identity, individually grouped and simultaneous. Nature is increasingly demonstrating to us how the and why. I mean, how the a distinct identity of hyper-simultaneous nature is discernible with subject appreciation. The parts of speech of English grammar are about the invisible but still discernible, / hyper-invisible but still discernible. And so appreciation of subjects individually grouped and together, to an extent, we could only appreciate subjects individually grouped and simultaneously to an extent. And with where and how we could appreciate that and discern that itself. It comes also with how we could discern that there is what is greater than what we could discern, and there is more finite than what we could discern, and there is active relativity to ourselves and to all things too, that we know we won't be able to discern, except for that way we know it instantly, because it is, for example, it is not our species body, it is not the other species bodies, but it is all things anyway, and the way it is, so how that is manifest that way is also how it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible. And this is how English was revealed to be taught. The ancients appreciated the difference between criminal and citizen's natures of positive treatments like peace. And the difference, in other words, positives can be used as negatives. Nature shows us this, but we have nature shows replaced. And the nature of debates, they contain quality aspects in nature that is criminally foreign influence nature / hypercriminally foreign influence nature. It's important to understand and appreciate this as nature, as it's discernible. That and how a breaching method relies upon people blaming things like criminal foreign influences for things that are really hypercriminal foreign influences. Here and there, shared self-value. Self-value roles blaming other things other than ourselves, too. Nature's demonstration / S of that. So, in other words, people can't follow mandated law properly because it will reveal all kinds of styles, needs, and natures of logic that have already been jumping into other people's conversations dishonestly, including the interbranch, and increasingly the difference of guilt with that. Overt criminal enterprise, private ones, even when they're not in the cases, they are personally and professionally involved with predicate acts and facts methods that were and are effectively used at countries A through Z to keep the names of the people of the sciences self-valued roles, with needs to cover up that, and collusion / S with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The interbranch and foreign and domestic intelligence at the same time used hypercriminally foreign influence. And that was so long that it created what was a breaching method propagated, only allowed to be manifest. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists, and the other countries A through Z. The suits and ties, counters, and exceptions as collusions as an array, with fact-shipping nature, quality aspect, nature, styles of it, and or the sensing for the breaching method, any body not, including if that body is a majority of people, including if that body is everyone. any grouping of countries, while locations, areas, and states have this possession slash hyper possession over all formal voicings. That whole Facebook has rules with since before the sale of itself to Twitter with obscure pictures. And I tried to communicate this to Twitter. And then Elon Musk or someone pretending to be him got involved with it, including a May Musk on Twitter. Involved further with the FBI with a principal obscure nature they forced. And predicate acts against me, falsified police reports. I caught them with worse, too. They haven't responded to what I caught them doing with the principal child abuser. There are a bunch of people with the name Kevin Dillon and tied to a Kevin Dillon who are increasingly involved with predicate acts on my street with proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, and identity theft, fraud, slanders. Weathersfield police have been faking conversations with me, with some Mendez police. A bunch of people at Tucker Carlson's Trinity College and next to it have roles with intelligence families near me since I was a kid, repeating fake things and planting it. Sometimes it's their sources, because their roles with multiple courts, judges, and prosecutors and their family members involved with organized crimes intercities. And then they lie about what they think about people. So the police departments are recording how kept criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought certain type of victim slash hyper victim. I'm not saying they aren't victims slash hyper victims. I'm saying that they pretend, they dishonestly jump in and pretend people are attacking the police to cover things up on a mass scale. They already had collusion slash S with all natures of crime scenes and with the real worst causes of such. A breaching method only propagated, only capable of being overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and interbranch and foreign. In other words, you guys want to have debates about things using your knowledge of good and evil dishonestly. Otherwise, it would have brought up James Madison's plan and why and how we're supposed to understand clearly. Why and how no one had free speech, including James Madison. Even once he was a president, he still didn't, slash chief, he still didn't have free speech. Someone must teach, but no one follows brand mandated law. The news is being forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to make allegations that have not been proven, to cover up how they are collusion slash us also proving fake things. And the news lies and changes the outcomes of cases. And that's used by investigators to how they're using their own differences, other people's differences, just to pretend their integrity, as the only way they could, valuing criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality, aspect, and natures of collusion slash S. In other words, there's a hyper collusion that we could observe and even needs to label it that way, because it is generated originally and still a whole bunch of different collusions, plural. France and Spain and England both prevented and helped America become America because their own countries were themselves hyper criminally foreign influence slash criminally foreign influence locations, areas, and states. Styles, needs, and natures of criminal and ceaseless natures of positive and negative syntax and names, treatments, and instances. Appreciation, collusion slash S roles. This breaching method knew they would be. This breaching method knew that nature would continually demonstrate. A human fact human nature breaching method is sickly and has sickly, non-distinctly hurt the northern colonies and southern colonies more than 13. None of America's founders were born. And with all those rules with that. In other words, same thing with the religious messengers in modern countries A through Z. There was already a hyperforeign breaching method entrenched. It was his measuring and maintaining defenses and uses of the names operated as countries A through Z, operated by locations, areas, and states. Use syntactical, the hyperpossession and screening it of a human fact human nature breaching method. So then now it's X. And I communicate, try to give them a response. They won't respond. It's mandated law proper. See, there are courts, judges, and prosecutors have been changing and faking digital evidences, uses of laws that direct them to be able to do that, even direct the news to do that, where they leave out exceptions in exception nature. So Connecticut's news networks and their sources have been criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought collusion/S with the campuses since I was a kid. Increasingly, WFSB has roles with people who are in the difference between kids or adults putting fake things in databases like little magic tricks, fake ties, natures of ties between people. There are people from Weathersfield who will honestly tell you they only know about me through other people. And then, like, time that corners, the people were timed when I would just walk by it, and it was the only time they ever. That's on a mass scale, though. This is against every single person, individual voice, including when it helps people. Only in criminal and seditious natures of means to cause positive value, nature, progressions, acts, natures, only criminal and seditious natures of positives are allowed, entertained. Where and how, too, we could observe. People are forcing things called allegations and natures of debate to prevent that quality of fact-cheating nature that we know was forbid originally and still. And the difference of it at the interbranch locations. For example, corrections offices, judicial branch offices, and their colonial and early states equivalent, and all tied to it like prisons. They never stop being collusion/S with defenses of uses and non-uses of words like crimes, as rules with predicate acts with facts, methods, needs, natures, and styles. Natures like criminal insidiousness natures, wrongdoers, wrongdoing itself, only capable of being once any system, even if it stops using black people's whites ways, the way the breaching method assigned it, they're still using it the way the breaching method assigned it. The breaching method forced rules with things sustained that no one would leave, no one wanted. It knew it was going to counter everything it did, but had a whole bunch of things done at the same time to keep the counters too. Self-defense. This breaching method, nature itself shows us that it's more probable. What caused these crazy things through history we know of is that a human fact-cheating nature breaching method, a criminal enterprise, knew that it was going to get caught. A transnational crime group knew it was going to get caught. As people involved also with the interbranch criminally foreign influence, as people involved with the operation of names A through Z. They played that, and that's in nature. They knew nature was going to demonstrate it to people, and they got caught. So then they figured the only way they could get out of it is to by doing worse things, and then to have that responded to first by people who would then defend their responses, not knowing how to respond to it properly. And they would start theorizing and blaming other things other than themselves for things that breaching method caused. No motivations but to hide something else. So involving strangers and make them fight with each other and then defend that. And then it built upon that, taking notes on it, knowing simultaneously it was making members use the only people capable of using remotely, syntactically, operating the names of the countries, those groupings, which is important too, because nature itself uses groupings the way we know with math groupings, but also hyper additionally in ways that none could mimic. So we could discern that too. Nature is increasingly showing us where and how the sciences appear not to share an identity. They are manifest that way where and how it teaches about hyper additional nature. Nature itself does at the same time. For example, But we are prevent short words. We are prevented short words regarding predicate acts when we make proper treatments of them. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and interbranch and intelligence tied to them at the same time with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, terrorists, even when they're not in the cases. They have collusion/S, putting the same sequence shifts. Same criminally pointable and tactical delusions wrong, collusion/S. Like when they make treatments about color and racism, prejudice. The breaching method showed the identities and names of the people, the sciences. They had to keep other things, others themselves, blamed for their roles with the breaching method originally instilled. So they keep, and so then they show that the campuses, sciences names too. They have to do that. Value, and while they're doing that, they have to value that having been. Our campuses having been left abridged, communicating other than our founders had to leave declassified for themselves and for us, because no one had free speech, even presidents/chiefs, even today. The difference of how, why they have free speech, they don't have free speech and have to pretend other, or why the people don't have free speech and have to pretend other to an extent/yes, again, and or being sent through ourselves at countries A through Z. That's also exploited. All natures of differences are being and have been exploited by this breaching method. Again, replacing what nature communicates, how it communicates, how it's discernible. It is functional. How nature's complete identity's difference is hyper invisible but still discernible. English was revealed to teach this, and other ancient languages were. And the republic for which we stand and its campuses system is reliant upon other systems too, simultaneously, because it is reliant upon how nature shows us it is functional, how one identity of value/value progression is hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. It has three identities of relativity to itself. One where it is juxtaposed with matter, one where and how it will not juxtapose with matter, and one where, to an extent, it juxtaposes. In balance or equal with that. But with that here, as a system positive onto itself, as Earth's a special difference as our own, or a special difference is forced from here, where and how we are demonstrated to this. Honest science would have brought up a special difference, how nature uses it, because nature shows us to appreciate this. And Earth's a special difference. Please Tucker Carlson or Elon Musk. Former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, has a bunch of federal criminals and people from other countries and border states and border countries at time collusions roles with my professors behind my back and without them knowing to an extent with digital crimes and mail crimes and wire crimes and planting evidences at Trinity College. They have a Hugh Ogden involved interstates, including with the former Governor Malloy, involved with people intercampuses with proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, involved with people interstates with triages, with the psychiatry side, is increasingly involved personally and professionally with judges and prosecutors with identity theft, fraud, slanders, personally and professionally with foreign and domestic medical families, little fake integrity with where and how they have other countries in the news shared here and there together. A whole bunch of fire departments have collusions running into high life aggressions, where the breaching method has manifest uses of the use/S of the location/S that it needs to hide, where nature is demonstrating the breaching method involved. Nature demonstrates to us a human fact treatment nature breaching method, for example. It is one of the things that is true always, that all those distinctly sick laws were about slavery, sick syntax and natures regarding Native American difference, even though our founders left declassified for us. We don't know their names exactly, but nature itself shows us too. Native Americans are part of that plural group as the founders who agreed with James Madison and his plan. But he didn't have the free speech to delineate that to everyone. Their plan was only to get everyone counter-extorted a little bit. Now that everyone was measured to maintain collusions against themselves or other system, they had to hide from that. There was no ways to do that unless they relied upon the unity forced by having done that simultaneously to people at key locations inside of more than 13 colonies that were entrenched with all kinds of entrenched roles with itself as systems in layers, tactical from nature's system. And as collusion /S with nature's demonstration /S of that. And I communicated about it that way because the breaching method is a singular breaching method that never stopped being demonstrated to us. All exceptions and exception nature itself has been used as styles, needs, natures of logic that are preventing people from changing and faking what we say regarding predicate acts as serious as World Trade Center predicate acts. So a bunch of people at Trinity College, since before I went at Trinity at Central Connecticut State University, and New Britain, Connecticut, and that's in Hartford, Connecticut. They have collusions also with the difference of guilt at those campuses or next to it, with names on my street, who are increasingly involved with Wethersfield police that put me in fake conversations with them and being at the police station as a kid, and now as an adult too. I went down there and had one word of conversation with one officer there. One of these Mendez brothers have roles fabricating police reports since they were kids with their educators too. I never had a class with them. They're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. New Britain Superior Court too, with sexual medical offenders of kids and people next to Fox Connecticut News and next to the news networks and or conjunctions to them too. The difference of that was his play too, where they go back and forth through questions, still criminally pointed with tactical illusions raw, and using methods to cover up their collusion /S. So then they bring up Epstein, and they want lists, and they want to research things dishonestly as collusion /S. I don't even know the girls' names. In other words, the F.B.I. director has a bunch of kids since they were kids, involved with a whole bunch of connected rape confessions and confirmations too, like a John DeMorrow and a Joe DeMorrow, and people that live and have conjunctions to them, involved increasingly with their educators with identity theft, fraud, slanders, putting fake things in databases behind people's backs, wire crime acts and methods with the F.B.I. and Wethersfield police, and their roles with home break-ins in my area, and judges and prosecutors with people on Church Street and Old Wethersfield, involved as victims that are used as victim predators against just strangers, and some of them try to make fake exceptions of other. There's also a Dr. Gilmore who pretended ties to me as people involved before and after the World Trade Center attack with Connecticut campuses like Quinnipiac University and Central Connecticut State University have collusion /S with people from other areas that have been planting evidences at and next to each of the campuses I went. Fake ties, fake natures ties to me. These are also people speaking or having spoken about crimes as collusions with the crime scenes. There are people involved with triages in California and in ones in Hartford, Connecticut, who have time collusions with intelligence families at the corners of the streets on Highcrest Street, with the news too, planting evidences with people named O'Neill, while bringing their kids into identity theft, fraud, slanders roles against people they don't even know, wire crimes acts and methods. They get a bunch of fakes to pretend fake information of other investigators in courts too. They're even changing what the outcomes of courts are with the news and having the nutbags pretend that. And I say nutbags because they have delusions at the same time, while they have criminally foreign influence, factory nature, quality aspects of nature. So they thank God foreign and domestic collusions with experts on such. Criminally foreign, they're incapable of having a legitimate conversation about delusions. In other words, they have our founders' communications replaced. They have other things, others or selves blamed for nature's demonstrations of it. So a bunch of people at Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University have collusions with fake transcripts into the databases at Harvard Hospital with names of houses and businesses next to them too, as their roles with their educators since they were kids, acting tied to and as people act from off campuses, putting predicate acts with facts, fake transcripts in databases, and having others act at the same time, and keeping them and individually grouped them together, needing to hide that as collusion slash as criminally foreign influence slash hypercriminally foreign influence in the future too. I don't know the Paul Kelly. He sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. His neighbors too. The intelligence community is recording, confess, demonstrate, confirm all along Route 175 and conjunctions to it, and people involved with the corners. Joe DeMauro and Heather Hansen also have crimes with a real estate sign on that corner, and other federal evidences crimes, wire crimes with the Wethersfield police when they were kids. And they have sexual circles where they have boys make confessions about the girls and their roles with it, and they don't say anything. No, and you don't even know the people. You never had a class, never seen them around school to tell them. And then they try to go back and forth questions about that, leaving out their roles with it. The same people involved with it. A whole bunch of people with Harvard Hospital have roles with medical and sexual offenders of kids with overt criminal enterprises and private ones with names on Church Street and Old Wethersfield. They'll tell you this themselves. In other words, they were just repeating fake things of others. Subby Vigero, too. When I was a kid, now as an adult, he has roles with multiple people involved with child abusers, leaders of kids. I'm not saying he had roles with sexual and medical offenders of kids, but he had roles with it through others, repeating fake things about himself and others. Names that next to the sides of Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, are increasingly involved with educators of Subby Vigero. I never saw him on the inside of a school in my life. He's involved with intelligence families near me, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, falsified police reports, all kinds of organized crimes, not the way they pretend, with their roles, with the names at next to the state corrections offices and the state judicial branch offices. Increasingly predicate acts of Wethersfield police on my street, and they're forging and switching names with multiple courts, forging and switching names. And the FBI directors, co-defendants, and their family members involved at Trinity College with a Joshua Stryker and a whole bunch of people tied to them, putting fake things in databases, fake ties, fake nature ties to me with the FBI and his co-defendants and their family members, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, first forced, years apart roles through other natures of organized crimes. There's an officer that uses the name Darth Vader with police forms next to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. Again, as ones involved on my street, also with people from New Britain and West Hartford locations. A whole bunch of people tied to the names Cololo, DeMauro, and Scalora have collusions with the intelligence community with the World Trade Center attack through other natures of organized crimes, identity theft, fraud, slander roles. Those things are manifest where and how they have replaced. They have roles replacing what nature communicates with black pupils, whites of eyes. For example, roles with that are manifest per nature as identity theft, fraud, slander styles, needs, and natures. Even though that is recorded, we have not had that addressed. And the breaching method would be that way. So no one follows mandated law legitimately. They're covering up sequence shifts too with their treatments of the Capitol. They've been showing presidents fake transcripts and or the equivalent. Like at Hartford Hospital, has roles with the World Trade Center attack with Saudis, with the Saudi attackers tied to people named Scalora and people in DeMauro and Aiello, involved with mayors too, with a whole bunch of different countries, people from Korea, involved with Taekwondo, both places, involved with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes with branches of government and their family members, foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, time collusions with the same ones, differences, rackets, their uses of their own differences, other people's. They even call attacks on them, so make it look like people took part of it. Like with Jew syntax, a Ray Kalal recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I mean, a Paul Zano sought me out after Ray Kalal graduated to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm He's involved with sequence shifts and planting down evidence on my street with a Cololo family and with people at town lines all along Route 3 and with his educators. I never had a class with Paul Zano. He's involved also with medical and sexual offenders of kids per his neighbors involved with it. Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. Yukon are a bunch of people involved with the name Zano and people with Johnson and Wales involved with the names Cololo and Zano, involved interstates. Further, there's a Luigi Guerrero with women in his family. I don't even know their names, and men were related to them. Involved with predicate acts, identity theft, fraud, slander, pretending passions, emotions to cover up life aggressions, repeating fake things with others, using truths for lies. I don't even know where Luigi Guerrero lives, but they have roles more with Rocky Hill campuses, with more sexual and medical offenders of kids, and Weathersfield campuses further. And these are people with the police chiefs retired, involved with those same departments, Newington police families. A whole bunch of people with the name D. Simone involved with this name Cololo, and people with the name O'Brien, and people involved with some untimely deaths years apart with the same house/S with other natures of organized crime acts and methods regarding people bringing it up with confessions. Confessions are manifest. This breaching method used nations A through Z's voices that could only be operated by and as locations, areas, and states. We need to get them on paper. Please get me off the fake conversations with WFSB and them onto paper with the interbranch. A bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court since I was a kid. Every year, intercities, they have collusions, planting predicate acts with facts, refusing to identify themselves, interbranch, switching names is a thing involved, manifest because their roles with identity theft, fraud, slander needs to pretend other. And their roles with time used as a criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. And their roles with the difference of the guilt of the organized crimes at the campuses or with the names next to it. And these are also differences, It's roles with interrelated, like Jewish-themed intelligence families involved with the Board of Education too, and with some nutbags with the church originally and still. There's a reason why the Old Testament says only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. There's a reason why the Quran says all that matters is if someone's going to be honest about their use of the name, Allah. There are proofs nature itself shows us. One of the reasons is because when you're using a name for a God, you're speaking about the invisible but still discernible. Nature shows us how it is functional, how there is a distinct identity of hyper-invisible but still discernible, and how we can check to make sure. We know that we are bridge systems if we use what we are actually capable of sensing. Finite details are lied about, and sequence shifts. Self-value rules with that, lied about. Grouped, active, and simultaneous values are lied about. We have left out how and why nature uses species body of individual bodies to communicate with us. It uses how different species have quality aspects of nature, distinct but also non-distinct and simultaneous, but further itself as / hypersimultaneous. I say / because there's 3 distinct identities of hyper-invisible but still discernible parts of itself. Like that, hyper-invisible but still discernible. The body that the seasons share. And where and how, like the future, even if the seasons never get here, we could already discern that body. It's only increasing value, even if they never get here, through what is and how what is really manifest, true always, not denying the science, not using sequence, exception, nature, tactical, terror from how it uses it. As it. And as its roles with a special difference in positive or negative. Positive kept here? Or is it forced from here? As forced space nature transfer as an negative identity relationship to itself as itself. We could agree all together, countries A through Z. We're only one little species body. It's the only reason it took so long, how we could ignore it for so long. not while breaching methods controlling the outcome, not even nature itself. Excuse me. Clearer than day. Breaching method has maintained remote possession of the only voices allowed to be heard, speaking on black and white. Things like racism and prejudice. A breaching method shows the identities of the law. They need to self-value that. Being have been used to blame things that nature demonstrates, like how no location has been liberated. All locations are tactically denatured, and it's causing negative nature progressions, acts, and natures. And roles with it are further at the same time. And to counter it, the counters are collusion /F. We need to pay attention to why and how they had such strict laws against every human difference. And why and how they have let people who pretend such is debatable get away with it so long, even though their logic, their nature of logic has inherent to it, active to it, and progressive to it, demonstration /S are the same thing. They get away with pretending other by preventing mandated law when people mention predicate acts with facts properly. Clearer than day. It's recorded how whole careers are kept criminally poor and influence, tactically delusions wrought into branch. Regardless if the whole thing was made up or not, this is inseparable from their Epstein treatments and their roles with the names interstates involved with the World Trade Center predicate acts. You guys are covering up rules. You guys are rules covering that up with more predicate acts with facts. Fake examples, making examples of free speech dishonestly to measure to sense for the breaching method too. That needs that. You know, they adapt if we're trying to speak about them switching names into branch, putting predicate acts collusions with the crime scenes. Get them on paper, one name in sequence, because many countries are involved with those names at the same time. In other words, and they can't help but leak it to people because of how they leak it to the breaching method that raised their education. Collusion /S with itself. Black people. Yeah.